Welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest, and I live here in Austin, Texas. I've had the gift of recovery since December the 27th of 1972. We are in the middle of a series that I'm doing on a book titled A Testament of Devotion, and the author is Thomas R. Kelly. Kelly was a Quaker mystic, professor, kind of a brilliant guy. The thing I like most about him is he takes a very difficult topic like the cosmic consciousness, the fourth dimension of existence, the spiritual connection that we're aiming for in recovery from addiction, and he breaks it down in language that is comprehensible. I thought we would get through this book rather quickly. I've used it several times in my morning quiet time, kind of the preparation I do for two-way prayer that they did in the early days of AA. He's a good companion to bring along on the spiritual journey. Now, as a Quaker, he's going to kind of come at this thing a little bit differently. He's not an alcoholic, of course, but he's going to talk about things that, when I listen to a mystic or I read a mystic, I think they're using the same kind of approach that Bill Wilson used in the Big Book. He had a spiritual experience in Towns Hospital. It was transformational. It changed him. It shifted something in his consciousness, and he was trying to explain that. I find some other writers are able to do the same thing, and I think Wilson would appreciate how they come at it as well. So I hope it's helpful. I thought I was going to get through this book pretty quickly, but I just hit chapters and said, well, we'll skip over this one. And then I say, nah, you can't skip over that one. It's too rich. So we're going to plow ahead, probably do 3 more episodes on this, and then we'll finish up. This one we're going to tackle today is titled The Blessed Community, the Fellowship. What's going on in my journey to God as I'm accompanied by other people? What is that about? I've selected 5 paragraphs from the book, and I'll put a link to the book in the show notes. Really encourage you to get a hold of a copy. You can get some used ones pretty cheaply. And then use it. What I'm going to do is I'll read each paragraph. I made a couple of notes that I'll go over for each one. There's probably about 30 paragraphs in the whole little chapter, but we just don't have time to do the whole thing. I think you'll get a sense of where he's coming from in the first 5. So, the blessed community. Let me read paragraph 1. When we are drowned in the overwhelming seas of the love of God, we find ourselves in a new and particular relation to a few of our fellows. The relation is so surprising and so rich that we despair of finding a word glorious enough and weighty enough to name it. The word fellowship is discovered, but the word is pale and thin in comparison with the rich volume and luminous bulk and warmth of the experience which it would designate. For a new kind of life-sharing and of love has arisen of which we had only dim hints before. Are these the bonds of love which knit together the early Christians, the very warp and woof of the kingdom of God? In glad amazement and wonder, we enter upon a relationship which we had not known the world contained for the sons of men. Why should such bounty be given to unworthy men like ourselves? So let me try to put this in alcoholic and AA language, right? The thing that came to my mind was Bill Wilson's experience of Ebby when he was lost in a sea of alcoholism and drowning. And then Ebby comes and he has found a solution. Wilson knew it was real because he knew Ebby drank every bit as much as he did, if not more. And yet there he sat in front of him, a changed man. And he figured if Ebby could change, maybe there's hope for a hopeless drunk like him, that he could change. In his book, Bill W., My First 40 Years, put out by Hazelden, it's Wilson's taped autobiography. He didn't write it, he recorded it. And he speaks in there about Ebby's visit. I wish it made it into the big book, but it didn't. But he gives a description of it there that's very powerful. And he says something to the effect of, "It was as if I was sitting in the dark recesses of a cave, chained to the back wall, and then coming into the cave steps Ebby." His family had been at the mouth of the cave, encouraging him to come out from his alcoholism. His doctor, Silkworth, was there doing the same. Come out, come out, come out. But he couldn't break free. And now, instead of breaking free, Ebby had entered into the place where he was living, all right, in desolation, in despair. And Ebby took him by the hand and led him out. That's the kind of relationship that is so different than most organizations, religious or otherwise, that you're going to be able to find. And it struck Wilson to the core. There's one translation into 12-step language. Another would be Dr. Bob. He was a member of the Oxford group for about 2.5 years, trying to get sober, trying to work spiritual principles in his life, but they weren't working until what? Till Wilson comes to town. The people in the Oxford group, Henrietta Sieberling and Bob's wife, Annie, say, you got to come talk to this guy. He's from New York, and he's sober, and I think he can help you. And I love it. Bob said, "I'll give this guy 15 minutes, but after 15 minutes, we're getting the hell out of here. You got it? You got it? You understand that?" So they meet up at Henrietta's house. The 15 minutes pass by. The two men are together, and they stay for 5 hours. Why? Because this guy was speaking the language of the heart. He understood where Wilson was coming from, or where Dr. Bob was coming from, rather. All right. And Bob heard it. It was the same thing that Ebby passed on to Wilson. Wilson was now passing on to Dr. Bob, that there's hope for the hopeless. And unless you've known hopelessness, that's not going to really register with you. But if you have known hopelessness, then the person who's bringing that hope to you is going to shine like the brightest star in the sky, because it was really dark where these fellows were. Quote I wrote down, are these the bonds of love which knit together the early Christians? Most people, you might not be aware that the Oxford Group, its original name was not the Oxford Group. It was called a First Century Christian Fellowship. And it's kind of saying the same thing that Kelly is hinting at here. What was it that went on in the lives of the first followers of Jesus, okay, that first century Christian bunch? What was it that happened to them, that they had found something that had been missing from their lives before meeting this man? It satisfied something inside of them that nothing else had up until that moment. So the first century Christian fellowship. And we'll get back to that at the end, because, when I kind of stumbled on that when I was studying up on the Oxford group 30 some odd years ago, that's one of the things that attracted me. And I started studying first century Christian scholars. I wanted to appreciate what the heck was going on in that first century. And it wasn't a whole bunch of theology, let me tell you that. It just didn't lend itself to that. What it lent itself to was, look how these people love one another. Look how they have found love. That's the good news. And everything says, God, they shouldn't have found it. They weren't the brightest people on the planet. They were fishermen and sinners and tax collectors. Like it said, they were unworthy of it, but that didn't seem to matter. It transcended their situation, let's say. Okay, I'll do a series on some first century Christian scholars that I've studied. I've kind of been avoiding that because I'm not here to preach and any of that nonsense. That's not what I'm about. What I am trying to be about is to help alcoholics and addicts understand what a spiritual experience is all about and help them arrive at one. Okay, and not limit themselves to less than what the program has to offer. Let's go on then. Paragraph 2. By no means is every one of our friends seen in this new and special light. A wholly new alignment of our personal relations appears. Some men and women whom we have never known before, or whom we have noticed only as a dim background for our more special friendships, suddenly loom large, step forward in our attention as men and women whom we now know to the depths. Our earlier conversations with these persons may have been few and brief, but now we know them, as it were, from within. For we discern that their lives are already down within that center which has found us, and we hunger for their fellowship with a profound, insistent craving which will not be denied. All right, heavy stuff. See if we can't break it down, make it a little more understandable. Not everyone is seen in this light, but certain people are. Certain people we can relate to. One of the things they told me in the early days was, if you'll go and listen to people's stories, before long you're going to hear one that sounds like your own. Sounds like it enough that you will identify with the person and not compare and contrast how I'm different from this guy or the other woman or whoever it might be, but how we are so much the same. And that sameness transcends all of the differences. So, and when you see them, it's like a light goes on around their face and in their personhood, a program of attraction. Uh, they have what we want, what we've been looking for. And not everybody has it. Another note, we discern in some their lives are already down within the center which has found us. That's a tricky sentence. Their lives are already down within the center which has found us. I said in an earlier episode that this fellow is coming at it differently than Jung comes at it, differently than Wilson comes at it, but it's really the same. Here he's talking about a center, a different center of consciousness, which has found us. Not that we have found it, but that it has found us. And in that sense, the new center of consciousness, God consciousness, the big book says, it's a gift. It's not something you figure out because it's unfigureoutable. But it's something that your resistance to it, your egocentric centricities that keep you separated from it, are now suppressed enough that it can get to us. So if you're in a period of pain, kind of rejoice, because suffering seems to open the door to this thing like nothing else does. We call it in the program the gift of desperation. And it is a gift, painful as hell. But when I'm hurting, then I seem to be open to the realization of this other center. So it has found us. And we see that in people. I mean, I saw this in a guy who had lived for 11 years on Skid Row, and he had it. I knew he had it. I knew a lot of holy people in my life, and I didn't think they had it. But this guy had it, and I wanted what he had. And I didn't want to spend 11 years on Skid Row getting it. And what he told me is you don't have to. It's really just as available for you as it was for him. This is how he had to get beat up to get it. But you don't have to do that. You just have to get to the same place. We have to raise the bottom. And I meet kids 15, 16, 18 years old who come into the program. They're whipped. They've had it. They're teachable. They're at that place where the egocentricity has been beaten down enough that they're humble enough to learn. And that's what we're really looking for here. We hunger for their fellowship with a profound craving which will not be denied. There is a craving for recovery that some people have and some people do not. Some people just want to remove the pain, you know, but some people want more, you know. They want as much as the program has to offer. There's not a great number of them, but those who want it, those who are willing to go down into the depths, the 12 steps can be the ladder. I don't think it's going up to God. I think it's the ladder that takes us down beyond self, where we can find that other center. Um, so this fellow Floyd had it. I knew he had it. I wanted what he had. He took kind of a mystical approach to 12 steps. He would read the mystics, people like Kelly, because they spoke to him, and I think Wilson was a mystic. And Wilson spoke to Floyd every bit as much as these other people did. Why? Because he got ripped open. And when you rip somebody open, whether they're a Christian, non-Christian, doesn't really matter. You get down to where love got a hold of them and changed them. Okay, created within them a separate center, and that's what Jung said. There's kind of the ego center, and then there's this other center. One he called the small self, the other the greater self, the greater personality. It's when self gets out of the way. It's what the big book talks about. Our problem was self-centeredness, selfishness. We had to be rid of it. We had to, or it would kill us. So there's the journey. It's moving from the head to the heart. Authors will help you on this journey, like Kelly. Authors like Robert Johnson, they really helped me. Authors like Richard Rohr, he helped me a lot. Showed me a different kind of Christianity, not the theological, rigid kind, but a kind that was very broad, very open, transformational, if you will. Hey, William James. That was the book that changed Wilson. Ebby brought him a copy of Variety of Spiritual Experience in his detox room. He read it and he said, somebody understands what the hell just happened to me. Well, James understood it. He understood it because he suffered a lot. He was depressed a lot. He found that other center where God can come through. That's what we're talking about. So these people who have it, we form a tremendous bond with them. It doesn't mean we have to go live with them, but it means that we have joined with them in some unique way, that we remain in contact with them. I met a fellow in Oklahoma City who introduced me to the concepts of the Oxford group. I met this guy one time, all right? Earl Husband was his name. I spent about 3 hours with him one night. Never saw him again in my life. And I felt a bond with him. Now, I still feel it. For the next, I'm doing the Oxford group stuff, the two-way prayer stuff for 32, 33 years now. I still am grateful to him because I know we're together in this. I mean, I could see it that he had a hold of it and he wanted to pass it on to me. And in 3 hours, he was able to do it. And we connected in a way that we'll always be together. You know, he's long dead, but it transcends time. It transcends space. It's joining. And the problem with the alcoholic, the problem with the addict is an intense sense of separation. Well, someone who can reconnect you to life, to love, to meaning and purpose, they're always going to have you're going to have a special relationship with them. So the paragraph says, we now know them at their depths. We know them at their depths. It's not that I got to go to meetings with them every week. It's not that I got to glorify them either. It's just that I know somebody at their depths and they know me at my depths. Whoa, that's the beginning of a transformed or changed life. Paragraph 3. Other acquaintances recede in significance. We now know that our relationships with them have always been nearer the surface of life. Many years of happy comradeship and common adventure we may have had together, but now we know that at bottom, we have never been together in the deep silences of the center, capital C, and that we never can be together there where the light of eternity shines still and bright. For until they too have become holy, WHOLLY, holy, God enthralled, God captivated, all right? God drunk on God, all right? Light centered. Until they have that, they can be only good acquaintances with whom we pass the time of day. A yearning over them may set in because of their dimness of vision, but the eye-to-eye relationship of love which binds together those who live in the center is reserved for a smaller number. Drastically and recreatively, fellowship searches friendships. Fellowship, which is the real joining, searches friendships, which is the more superficial level, burning, dissolving, ennobling, transfiguring them in heaven's glowing fire. Okay, rich language here. We want others to have what we have, but they have to get it themselves. We can open them to it. Some of them may not even want it, you know. Book says, that's okay, don't waste your time with those. But those who do want it, all right, spend time with them. Be available to them. Let them know that what they're looking for in you is present within them. Otherwise, and this is a big mistake I see a lot in the program, we turn our sponsors into God. You know, they get on the circuit, and aren't they wonderful? And isn't AA wonderful? And one fella, it just shocked me. He said he went on vacation, hadn't been to a meeting in 2 weeks, and he was on the edge of despair. Well, come on, guys, something's wrong with your program. You know, if your reliance is on meetings and your reliance is on your sponsor, you haven't grown up enough. The reliance needs to be in one place, the one place that will not let you down. What's that? That's that alternate center, the God within, the great reality within, which is with us always. Even for the 2 weeks when we're on vacation. you know. So, but if I can learn to put my faith and my trust in that, and that's where the prayer and the meditation comes in. And what we have done is substitute meetings for it. Meetings are helpful and they get you going, but at some point, and I don't know if it's a year, 3 years, 5 years. Damn, it took me about 20 before someone taught me, and that was Earl, that there's something beyond that. There's a fellowship beyond the meetings, all right? It's the fellowship of the Spirit. And not everybody in your 12-step program is there. Find the ones who are. Learn from them. Learn how they got there. And then go there yourself. Okay, paragraph 4. Going to skip a paragraph here. See how these Christians love one another might well have been a spontaneous exclamation in the days of the apostles. The holy fellowship, the blessed community, has always astonished those who stood without it, who stood outside of it. The sharing of physical goods in the primitive church is only an outcropping of a profoundly deeper sharing of a life with a capital L, a life, the base and center of which is obscured, you can't see it, to those who are still oriented about self rather than about God. To others, tragic to say, the very existence of such a fellowship within a common life and love is unknown and unguessed. I'm telling you, I think maybe 90%, and this is going to sound so condescending on my part. Please forgive me. It's taken me 53 years to get here, but I think 90% of the people in church have missed the message. And I think 90% of the people in 12-step fellowships have missed the message. They're clinging to the institution. They're clinging to beliefs rather than clinging to a common experience of the divine, all right, which is within everybody, and the saints have it. Now, I know we say we're not saints, and God knows I'm not a saint, but I sure am attracted to those who are more saintly, who have found more of it, of the richness that Floyd had, that those of us who are serious about the program are still searching for, and in parts have found it and want to pass those parts on to other people. In its place, this is important, in its place, psychological and humanistic views of the essential sociality and gregariousness of man seek to provide a social theory of church membership. I'll break this down. Don't worry about this. From these views spring church programs of mere sociability and social contracts. The precious word fellowship becomes identified with a purely horizontal relation of man to man, not with the horizontal vertical relationship of man to man in God. To most, the fellowship of the Spirit is unknown, and he says that's tragic. In its place, they substitute psychology and humanistic views. What springs from these are what? Programs of mere sociability. They substitute the fellowship of the program rather for the transformational experience of the divine within. All right? There's the key, and that ain't good enough. It may keep you sober, but it's going to keep you kind of clinging, and it's not going to lead you to the depths of what the transformational experience is supposed to be about. I'm pretty serious about the program. I think I can say that about myself. I always have been. And I attribute that to having some pretty good teachers along the way who kind of beat that into me, that it ain't just about not drinking. It's about finding the God within, all right? And to me, that's what they were about, and that's what they wanted me to be about. And in a faltering way, I've tried to follow them along that journey. So let me just break down that last part, because I think that says it all. So the fellowship, then, if it's kind of limited, it's man to man, rather than being man to man in God. That's a subtle difference, but it's everything. We meet in real, genuine fellowship. Why? How? Because each of us is meeting within the framework of the God within. Namaste. The God in me greets the God in you. That we bow to one another, not man to man, but man to man in God. That's the center that we share. Okay. And none of us does it perfectly. We know that. That's okay. But we've had some experience of it. And that's the thing that is worth passing on to one another and to the new people in particular, that it doesn't become a social club. Okay. I don't bet my life on a group of drunks. I don't turn my life and my will over to the care of a meeting. I don't do that, and I think I'd be a fool to do it. The one thing that will not let you down, and you need to define that and experience that for yourself. That's your journey, and you're unique. And that's where I think two-way prayer is so very helpful, because it puts us in contact with that voice, that power. I was talking to a fellow the other day, 40 some odd years sober, just recently came across two-way prayer. And he said he's a serious 12-step guy, all right? It's no BS, no lightweight. And he said the two-way prayer stuff is revolutionary. Boy, my ears perked up, because that's the way I experienced it, that this is revolutionary. It's not reforming, tweaking you around the edges. It's revolutionary. And the program is revolutionary, particularly as it was first done. But we've lost that. I'm going to get to that in this next paragraph, pardon me. But every period of profound rediscovery of God's joyous immediacy is a period of emergence of this amazing group, interknittedness of God-enthralled men and women who know one another in Him. There it is again, who know one another in and through Him. It appeared in vivid form among the early Friends. So he's back to the Quaker thing. The Quakers had it in the beginning. He said a lot of them are losing it. And I would say the same thing of the Christian tradition, that they had it in the early days. They had a hold of something and they lost it. All right. And I would say the same for every 12-step fellowship, that if you lose it, and you're going to lose it, right, as time goes on, you have to go back to the early days and see what was it that was happening back at that time. All right. For those in the Catholic tradition, Vatican II, brilliant thing came out of that. It was we've lost it, and we have to look back to our origins to find it again. And for the spiritual communities like the Franciscans or the Jesuits or the Benedictines or whatever the religious orders were, they said, go back and look to your founder. What was the unique gift, the charism they called it, that they had, that now the organization seems to have lost. And we'll get a little deeper into this. The Quakers had it in the early days, but that was back in the 1600s when they first got going, right? The early days, the movement showed the same bondedness in love. The disclosure of God normally brings the disclosure of the fellowship. That's worth repeating. The disclosure of God normally brings the disclosure of the fellowship. So if God is disclosed, then the fellowship is going to follow. We don't create it deliberately. We find it, and we find ourselves increasingly within it as we find ourselves increasingly within Him. It is the holy matrix of the communion of the saints, the body of Christ, which is His church. William Braithwaite, I don't know who he is, he's a Quaker, says that it was a tragic day when the Quakers ceased to be a fellowship and became a society of friends. Yet even within the society and ever within the Christian church has existed the holy fellowship, the blessed community, that's the title of this chapter, and ecclesiola in ecclesiae, it's Greek. He's going to define that. A little church within the church. An ecclesiola and ecclesia, a little church within the greater church. I came across something that blew my mind, and I'm going to finish off with this. I've talked about it a few times before, but it was a story that changed my life. And it came shortly before I got into the history of the Oxford group, the AA connection to that. I was in West Texas, and I was 20 years sober, and I was stumbling around. The fire had gone out in me. It was burning bright when I was first sober, and lasted the embers for quite a long time. But after 20 years, it was getting a little ashen, shall we say. And I met this guy who told me the story of the 5 M's. And it's the story of spiritual institutions. So it's the story of the Quakers. It's the story of the church. It's the story of AA, OA, CA, and it goes like this. It says it's 5 M's. Story of every spiritual institution. First M is the man. The man could be Jesus. It could be Buddha. It could be Bill Wilson. That's the M. And that man has a profound spiritual experience. And he comes back from that with the message. All right. Then the message is who that man really is. That's what we've been talking about here. That in our depths, we are love. In our depths, the great reality exists within. We touch it, or better yet, it touches us. All right. And that is the message. The message is what? Who you are. You're a child of God. Yeah. And we're all children of God. Well, there's nothing more liberating than that. To finally know who the hell you are, you know? And it ain't just you're an alcoholic or a junkie, or a food addict. You're more than that. All right. That's who you are. That's what the message is. That you've been in your cave and somebody discovered you and they're showing you a way out. And now you can go into other people's caves and you can touch what's missing in them and help them find the way out. That's the light within that we talked about in the first episode of this book. The light, we don't have to define it with a lot of theology. It's the light that is within each and every one of us. And that is the light of love. The light of love. That's the message. Now, the third M is the guys told me is the movement. The movement as the thing gets organized, as the Quakers start to hold their meetings in silence and get together and evolve and then start writing rules and regulations. That this is exactly what happened in the early church. It was very broad, and people were welcomed in. Now then they started putting rules, and we can let this one in, but not that one in. Well, this one okay, but now you got to do a year doing this before we're letting you in. You know, it got tight. All right. Wilson and the first several hundred people in AA, after a while, they sent around to all the groups in Alcoholics Anonymous, said, "What are your requirements for membership?" You know, there were several thousand actually by this time, and they sent in all the groups sent in what their membership requirements were. Well, Wilson said, "God, I couldn't get in. If that's the requirement, I can't get into AA. How crazy! How crazy!" And that's when they evolved into the only requirement for membership. Originally, I think it was a sincere desire. And they even got rid of that. Maybe it isn't a sincere desire, but it is a desire to get sober, even a half-assed desire. Good enough. Come on in. Come on in. So there's the movement that attracts people, and it's richest in its earliest days. Okay? And it's alive and it's exciting. He described it as fire. These guys were on fire. They couldn't wait to go out there and find another person who was hurting so they could pass on the fire to them. The fourth M is the machine then. When we organize and we destroy it. It becomes mechanical. And I ask people, have you been to a mechanical meeting where the fire's gone out? It's just uh, by rote. It's dead, and that's of course the fifth M, the monument or the mausoleum. It has died. I've been to dead 12-step meetings. I've been to dead treatment centers. I've been in a lot of dead churches where the fire's gone out, the spirit is gone. There are a lot of dead Quaker meetings, I'm sure, and that's what Kelly is saying here. But there's always enough embers that if you go back to the beginning, you go back to how it was in the original program. And that's the only reason I say to go back to the original program. I'm not a believer that the Oxford group had it perfectly. They did have some things right. I think particularly they had the four absolutes and the two-way prayer, the quiet time, the importance of that versus just going to meetings. They had that right. But they lost it too. They focused then on numbers. Whereas in the beginning it was small groups, small teams of people who would come together and practice and share their two-way prayers. They started going after the numbers. And when you go after the numbers, you're going to lose the message. Trust me. I've seen it happen. I've been a part of it. There's a certain need for intimacy. So if I run a group of two-way prayer group, I try to limit it to 12, 15 people. It's a team. That's what they had in the beginning. Teams of people that you got to know them closely. Not you just drop in with 100 people and you share with them the intimacies of your soul. Trust me, it ain't going to happen. Or if it does, you're likely to get abused. That this is trust that has to come about slowly, and it comes with responsibility. You got to show up. And if you don't show up, you're really not a member of the team. And if you're not getting more honest and loving and pure and unselfish, then you're not evolving. So that's what happened to the Oxford group. I think it grew up too damn big, lost sight of what it was about. And so it happens in 12-step, happens in churches, but then little pockets of people come together and they say, I want what the original people had. I want to find out what it is. And it's personal transformation. And the two-way prayer, I am convinced, is a tremendously helpful tool for getting you there. So if you haven't looked at the website, I'd encourage you to go to the two-way prayer website. There's a video that we did there. I'm working on a book. Unfortunately, it won't be out till June of 2025. I don't know what the hell they're going to do sitting on it. That's the reason I was late getting this podcast episode up. I was finishing up the book and working on 100 or so footnotes to uh, do the citations. So anyway, it'll be there. Meanwhile, you can find what you need in some of the Oxford Group material and some of the podcasts. It'll get you what you need to know. So that's enough out of me. Uh, like I say, these little chapters are so rich. I can't just skip over them. And I hope you found some good things that will be helpful for you here in your recovery. If you do, drop me a note. Love to hear from you. You can write me at two-way prayer, TWO, two-way prayer at gmail.com. So till then, thanks for listening. God bless and keep coming back.